So in this video, we're going to be taking a look at creating a rhinestone design for this piece of artwork, and we just have the JPEG version to work with right now, which is really perfectly fine for this particular example. It's actually a very, very straightforward design, one that looks somewhat complicated, but actuality, it's going to be pretty straightforward to do. So the first thing that we need to do is crop our bitmap somewhat. So I'm going to come into CorelDRAW and grab my shape edit tool here, which is the second tool of the toolbox here. And I'm going to grab the two nodes here on the left, bitmaps or JPEGs or whatever you want to call them, always defined typically by 4 nodes, initially anyhow. Then we could just click and drag those in. And I don't want to clip the ribbon, but I want to get really tight to the ribbon. And do the exact same thing over on this side. Get really tight to the ribbon. And same thing top and bottom. Get really tight to the bottommost element. And get really tight to the topmost element. Right there. Okay. Now, the next thing we'll do is we'll go ahead and scale this to 9 inches. Okay. Now we know that this particular design is most likely for a lady, so 9 inches wide is probably about where we want to be. You know, there's a lot of argument on what's the maximum size, but that's probably a good general size for a lady. The other consideration was this particular individual who we're doing the artwork for, that's just the size cutter that they had. Now, if we were to make it 9 inches tall, okay, then they could just turn the artwork in their cutter, and this would be the height would actually be the width of the cutter, and then it would be basically 10 3/8 wide, which I think it's probably a little bit too wide for a lady's garment. So, where do we begin? Well, what we have to decide is what room do we really have to work with? Because of all the elements in the design, what do we really have to work with? And so the first thing that I'll do probably is the most easy thing, and that is this ribbon. So first thing I need to do is draw me a path for my ribbon. So I'm going to grab my pen tool and begin drawing that path. So I'm just going to click and click and click. And what I'm doing when I'm placing these nodes, these are all straight line segments, at every turning point, shall we say, that at every turning point I am going to drop a node. Now we can always add nodes, delete nodes at a later point. So you just, the more experience you get, the more you'll know where to put them. But I'm just going to kind of come in here, and I'm just using my mouse to zoom in and out. But we'll go ahead and set one right there. This looks like basically a straight line segment, a little bit of a curved segment there, and we have a straight line segment, and then we'll drop a node right there. Come over here, we'll drop a node. Come over here and drop a node. Come up here, a little straight line segment there, and then finally back to where we began. Okay. And by default, I have a blue fill with a kind of orange color outline. So I'm going to get rid of my fill by clicking on the little X here. Now by default, your color swatch in CorelDRAW could most likely be over on this side, but I always put it on the bottom. Just click and drag it on the bottom. So we'll go ahead and click, and that gets rid of the fill, and you can see I can really see my outline pretty well. So then the next thing that I do is I grab my shape edit tool and I select every node that I just placed. And then I come up here to my property bar, and this little icon right here, it says convert line to curve. So every single one of those straight line segments has now been turned to a curve, whether they're actually going to be curved or not. And then I just begin. So I can just click on the line and drag. That's it. So you just click and drag, and you can see that really follows the line pretty good. And we just keep going. So we're going to click on the line and drag. Now you can see that node I didn't place very well, did I? So I'm just going to drag it down a little bit, something like that. And again, we're just using this ribbon as kind of a guideline. So it doesn't have to be exactly perfect. Now you can see we drew a straight line segment, and yet this is a little bit curved, so we'll just drag that curve line down. Now, you probably can't see this very well, but there's a little bit of a bump right there. And part of the bump is because I'm not really on the original ribbon. So first thing I'm going to do is drag it more into place. And just a tiny little bump there. I don't know if you can see that very well, but it's just a little bit. And so what I do every single time, just about every single time, anytime I have two curves coming together, I'm just going to right click and choose smooth. And I don't know if you can see it, but it's nice and smooth. That's the whole purpose of that function. Nice little swooping action there. Back over here. Again, click and drag. Click. There we go. You see that now. Now this is off just a little bit, so I'll click on that node. I got these control handles now, and then I can fine tune. Okay, so now I have two curves, right? So I'll right click on the node, smooth. It made just a minor little adjustment, and now it's perfectly smooth. Now this right here, I actually want to be a straight line. So I'm just going to right click and choose two line, and now it's a perfectly straight line. And then this right here was a little bit of a curve on the original design, so we'll just go ahead and make that a little bit of a curve. And we'll right click here because that was a line, so we'll do two line. And then notice like when we do these curves, if I were to pick from right here and pick up, see how I can control that curve and get it to bend pretty good. Let me undo that. If I draw it way back here, I could pick up that same line and I can control it pretty decently back here. There's a little bit of a, see how that on the right there it doesn't, but it really doesn't matter a whole lot. And as you do this, you'll just get more and more comfortable with it. But where do I pick on this line to control it best? And I'm just going to pick right here about, and look at how it controls it differently on the right. By clicking it where I did, I was able really to control the whole line. And that's something when you're picking these lines, if you're picking way back here and you can't control that line very well on the right, then you know you didn't pick at the right spot. So train yourself. If I pick right here dead center and drag, I can choose that and position that line so much better where I can really almost get it exactly perfect without any further adjustment. So just kind of keep that in mind as you're making those selections. About dead center is where I usually begin, and usually that gets it. So like right here, you've got this one straight line segment. Okay, if I pick way over here and drag, okay, I can't really get it to line up with the beans, can I? But if I pick roughly dead center and drag, look at how much more control I have. Much more control. So just kind of keep that in mind. Now we do have two nodes, so we'll right click and smooth, and we will right click and smooth this one too. Okay, so we know that that is all perfectly smooth. Okay, and then over here, we'll right click on this line and we'll go two line. Now, we have a situation here where we actually need a little bit of a line segment, but we're going to fix that here in just a little bit, so we won't concern ourselves with that just right now. Okay, so now that is our ribbon. In a nutshell, that's our ribbon. So what we're going to do now is we're going to, this ribbon kind of folds back on itself over here on the left, and it folds back on itself a little bit over here on the right. And that's kind of what our next step is to do that. Now, this is where it gets a little bit complicated to explain. What we're going to do is this line right here at the top of this ribbon, we're going to extend that line over to here. And down the bottom line, we've got this line going across, and we're going to extend that line just this little bit right here. Just that little bit. Okay? So what I did, because this is something I do all the time, is I created a little macro to do it, to kind of do it for us. I'm going to show you both ways using a macro, and then I'm just going to show you how to do it in CorelDRAW. So for the top line, we're going to use the macro. And all we're going to do is go to our Shape Edit tool, and I need this piece of line. Right now, this is like one continuous curve going all the way around a ribbon. And what I want to do is I want to take just this one segment of the ribbon and have it all by its little lonesome. So this is what we do. We zoom in here and we pick that node. Okay? That's where I want it to cut. And then we come all the way over here and hold down our Shift key and click on the other node. And break at nodes. Click. And those nodes are now broken. And not only are those nodes broken, but that line segment is all by itself. See that there? It's all by itself, which is exactly what we want. Now, how do we do the exact same thing in CorelDRAW? It's just an extra step or two. So again, we'll select our object, come to our Shape Edit tool. I'm going to hover over the node, right click, and choose Break Apart. Okay. Then we'll go over here. This piece right here, this node right here, we'll do the same thing. Right click, Break Apart. Now, once we've done that, then we come to the Arrange menu and Break Apart. Okay. There's absolutely nothing complicated about that. It's a little bit more to it than just selecting nodes and clicking break, but it has the exact same result. So when we click and drag, you can see that piece is all by its little lonesome. Okay, and that's exactly what we were looking for. So now the next thing is we need to do a little extension. And I'm pretty much a self-taught CorelDRAW guy. So right or wrong, it's just how I do it. And at the end of the day, it gets the job done. So that's really all I care about. But for this purpose, I'm just going to show you what we're doing here. We're going to take our pen tool, and we're going to just click and click. Hit the space bar to get out of our pen tool. Nothing magical about that, right? But then I'll grab my Shape Edit tool, and I'll pick this node, and I'll drag it and snap it to that node of the end of the piece that we're working with. And then I'm going to take this piece and drag it down and snap it to that node. There's my extension right there. Okay, now technically speaking, I could right click on this and choose to curve and give it a pinch of a curve to kind of go with the flow, and that's fine. We wouldn't necessarily have to do that, but why not, right? So then the next thing I do is select that little tiny segment, hold my Shift key down, and select that longer segment. And so now we have those two selected. And when those two are selected, this button right here becomes active. And that is our Combine button. Okay, really, if we're going to be using CorelDRAW, do not shy away from these shortcuts. So Control L is Combine. Okay, so we'll go ahead and choose that button, and that combines those two. Now, from there, what I do is I grab my Shape Edit tool again, and there's actually two nodes right here, one on top of another, one for this little segment and one for this little segment. And so I'm going to select them both, and when you have two nodes selected, you have this function right here, Join Two Nodes. And we click, and sure enough, those two nodes have now become one. And so basically, we do the exact same procedure over here. I just draw a segment, grab my node tool, and click and drag. And here, we're going to click and drag right here. we're going to right click on the segment to curve and drag that out so it has like this continuous sweeping motion. Perfect. And then we'll hold our shift key down, and then we'll go ahead and hit combine, switch to our shape tool, select the two nodes, and hit join. Okay, so now our top piece is done, and you could see just by adding that little segment, you can really visualize how that ribbon is kind of like bending back around itself on both sides here. You can see that very clearly. And that's all there is to it, really, in its most basic form. So now that we have this ribbon done, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just pull this aside. And if I right click, so let me just go back over that again. So I selected my ribbon, I grabbed it from the center, I click and drag with my left mouse button, and then I right click and let go. And now you can see I have this beautiful duplicate of the original ribbon. This beautiful little duplicate. Okay? And you know, it looks perfect, nice outline, and honestly, it really couldn't be easier to make once you understand the basic principles. So with that done, now it's time to add our rhinestones. And this is really, my approach is really the foundation of our design, because what type of stone do we want to use? And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to just pick one segment, which this segment is that top piece. And for anyone who's ever done rhinestones, you know that you want to shy away from SS6 as much as you can, because them little buggers are tough sometimes. So it was asked that we stick with SS10. So let's see what it looks like with SS10. What I did here is I just picked some random color off my little color wheel, and that will become our stone color. And then we'll go over here to the blend mode, and we'll choose a stone size. Now, when I'm creating a template, my stone sizes are 3.3 millimeters for the stones that I use. You may use something different, you know, depending on what stones you use. And then the spacing between stones, I use 0.4. Again, you may like it tighter, not as tight, whatever. So 0.4 of a millimeter for me. And then we're going to add stones. And so we just choose this create blend function, and there's our stones. And you know what? I think this is going to look really good. What I was afraid of was, without actually seeing it, I wasn't sure how SS10 would look, how many stones we would actually get, and the more stones that you get, the more facets you have, and the more bling you have. But I think this will actually look pretty nice. So then we could go ahead and apply stones to the bottom one too. Okay, and then we could apply stones to this little tiny piece. But this little tiny piece goes from here, all the way down around the bend there. Okay, now let's go ahead and add stones just the way it is. And you can see it's pretty good. There's some overlapping going on and what have you. If we go into wireframe mode, this is indicative of doing rhinestones anyhow, right? Is all this overlapping and whatnot. But you know what? We can clean that up. I'm not even going to sweat that at all. And then we got this piece over here, this little piece right here, and we'll go ahead and add stones to it. And again, we've got some cleanup here, but that's total non-issue. We can take care of that really easily. So go back in here to the enhance mode, and there we have our ribbon. Now this text, what I was going to suggest on this text is for legibility to stick with the original design as closely as possible, and just considering all the other bling that's going to be on this design, I personally would do this text in a gold heat press material. It'll look great. You know, you can get a nice metallic gold. It'll shine. They even make like a holographic film that really blingy, just like the rhinestones. That would look fantastic in. But all the intricacies of the letters and whatnot, you know, I just think it would really stand out nice and it'd be a nice contrast to all the other bling. So that's what I would recommend for that piece of text. Now back over here to the ribbon, you know, we could decide to fill this in more. I think given all the other bling that we're going to have, the elephant is going to be totally filled, and the Greek letters totally filled. I think this ribbon is probably going to look okay just the way it is. So that's it for this part of it. We've got the ribbon set in stone. The next part we're going to deal with, we're going to go ahead and stone out these individual letters, and then for the third part, we're going to tackle that elephant. Thanks for watching.